We're going to be adding some detail down into this area because right now it actually looks fairly simple. We just have that rear differential and there's really nothing else there, so it just looks kind of empty in back here. So we're going to make some fairly simple other things that would be in this general area based on references that I looked at. I've already got something made out. This is going to be kind of my guideline for things that I'm going to be making. So what we're going to do first is we're actually going to add like a little lip to this. We're going to give this some depth. So we're going to select this car, tab into edit mode, go to vertex select, alt right click, and actually what we're going to need is another vertex in the center. So we're going to select this vertex, E to extrude, right click to cancel, drag it to the center. Now we're going to alt right click and make sure we select this vertex as well. Press F to make a face, I to inset, B for border, and just make a very small inset. And then we can delete this face, so press delete, choose faces. That'll get rid of that extra vertex there too. We can alt right click on this, E to extrude, right click to cancel, and just drag this up a little. And that's just going to add in a little extra depth to that. I'm going to just hit the smooth shading just to make sure that that's on. You can move this up a little more if you want, or whatever you feel is necessary, so that you just have that little extra piece there. So now what we want to do is start creating some of these pieces here. So we're going to start out with the cube and we're going to make this bottom section, and then we'll just extrude these other sections out of that basically. So we're going to go back into Blender and left click on the back of the car, then left click over here to move your cursor, and in edit mode we're going to create a cube, and then go to face select this interior face and delete it. Then we're going to select one of these faces, do select linked, and drag it to the center, and then let go. Now we can use S to scale it down, and we're already getting something similar to what we want. I'm going to do Control 1 for back view, and this bar basically goes as far out as where the light is or close to it, so we're just going to scale it some until it gets to be basically where the light is. Then we're going to do S and Z to make it a little bit thicker like this. I'm not really sure. Okay, you can kind of match the thickness of this, or you can do something different because I don't think I did mine 100% perfect, so just do what you think is going to look nice. And we can scale it on the y-axis as well to make it a little bit longer or wider. Something like this will be fine, and we can kind of pull it in position. Back here, maybe do Control 1 so we can see a little better, and bring this up some. And I just want to compare this to how I had it there. So this is probably needs to be scaled down a little on the z-axis. Something like that. Just so we can see some of the other details that we're going to be adding. I didn't want this to be too tall. So now what we can do is do Shift H to hide the rest of the car to make this a little easier. So do Shift H with that cube selected. That's going to hide the rest of the car. And we want to add like a little bevel to this so it'll look better when we do smooth shading. So we're going to go to vertex select, Alt and Shift, right click on this to deselect. Actually we want to go to edge select, so in edge select, we're going to put, actually, before we do that, I notice we have this extra edge here for whatever reason, so we're just going to press select it and then press delete and choose edges. Your model might have it, it might not, either way. If it's there, just delete it. If not, just ignore that. So now I'm going to press A to select this, Alt, Shift, and right click to deselect that edge, or this edge loop actually. And now we're going to do Control B to bevel this. Just do a small bevel, something like that. Should be fine. So now when we turn on smooth shading in object mode, it'll look a little better. And actually, I don't remember if I did, I guess that's all that I did really. I might do a bit more of a bevel, so I'm going to do Control Z a few times and then do Control B again so that it has a bit more of an edge there. I'm not sure if that made much of a difference or not, but now we're going to make these little pieces that extend out and towards the front of the car. I didn't start them all the way at the edge, so we're going to need an edge loop here and an edge loop here. So we're going to do Control R and left click and then drag it into position. Control R again, left click and drag it into position. I'm just going to compare it to that, and you can use Q to slide it around after if you need to. And now what we're going to do is go to face select and get this face, and we want to inset it because it doesn't, like this piece I believe just gets welded onto this bottom piece, and this piece is actually a smaller area. Like as you can see, it's not quite as wide as that piece on the bottom, and then they would just weld it at the bottom here. So this piece needs to be a little smaller, and in order to do that I just did an inset to make it a little smaller. So we're going to make sure this is selected, press I to inset, and if you want to add some depth or some height to it, instead of, so I'll show you two different ways. You could just left click, and in this case you could just bring this up a little, and that will give you some height to this. Or I'm going to just press Control Z and undo that. Or you can do I for inset, and then you have all the options at the bottom, down at the bottom right here. My mouse keeps going all over the place, but down at the bottom you have all these options. And one of them is to hold Control to add, like right down here it says depth control to tweak. So you get the inset to where you want it. So I want my inset like this. Then you hold Control and you can add depth to it. So I'm going to do it that way just to show you another method to do it. So now that we have that, all we have to do is press E to extrude, right click to cancel, and start bringing this higher up. And we want to get this in position, like we want the height to be correct before we start adding in the other details, like this other piece that comes off of it. So I'm going to bring the car back by doing Alt H. And just press A to deselect everything, and the only thing we want to select is this top face on this pillar that we just made. And I think I'm just going to check to see how high I brought this. I actually didn't bring it that high up. I thought I brought it a little higher up, but I guess not. So we can bring this down a little or just leave it where it is. Actually, I think just leave it basically where it is. So something like that is going to be fine. And then we're going to just bring this back to an angle similar to this looks pretty good. Then we're going to do select linked again and then Shift H so we can hide the car again. So we have this, and we want these other pieces that come off and at an angle. And I did the same thing because this would be a separate piece as well, and it would be welded onto this side piece and then welded onto this piece. So I did an inset on the bottom again, and then I did an inset on the side over here. So we're going to need more edge loops, like we need this edge loop and this edge loop and then this one here and this one here. So I'm going to press A to deselect everything. I'm going to do Control R and add in this bottom one. It's fairly close to the bottom, so just bring it down to there roughly. Then add another one up here or so. And we're going to do the same down here, Control R. Add in our edge loops. I'm just comparing like the position of my edge loops on this one to the position in the other one, just so I get sort of a similar result. So now that we have that, we're going to take this and we're going to take this. So go to face select, select this one, shift select this one, and do I for inset. This will make sure that they're both inset the same distance because we selected them both at the same time and we're doing the inset at the same time. So again, we're going to do the inset and we're going to get our distance, and you can either left click and then adjust them individually, but in this case it's actually easier if we do the inset and then hold Control. So then this is a case where holding Control would be easier because it's going to move both of them, as you see, based on the face normals, and in this case it just makes it a little easier for us. So we're going to do something like this, and that will set us up for that. Now all that's left is basically to connect these. And to do that, we're going to delete these faces first. So with them selected, we're just going to press delete and choose faces. And now we have these holes. And we're going to go to vertex select, Alt and right click on this, Alt and Shift right click on this, so you have both edge loops. And now we're going to do bridge edge loops. My hotkey is Shift Q for that. That's not a standard hotkey, so if you don't have it, go to Mesh, Edges, Bridge Edge Loops, and you can either set your hotkey or just left click on this and it will do the same thing. So if you want to just do it this way, you can do it that way without having to set up a hotkey. So that gives us this result. Looks somewhat similar to this. This one I think looks a little wider though, maybe not. Yeah, I think it does. Like, you could go back and make this a little wider, but I don't know. We'll just go with this for now. So now what I wanted to make is this next piece. It's basically a cube again, and then it has this little hole here. So we're going to make another cube. We're just going to go to create and choose cube and just scale it down with S and sort of bring it into position. Scale it down some more. We can just vertex snap it on the y-axis basically to that point, and then bring it down and actually snap it again to that point. And move this more into position, so something like that. I actually had it hanging over, I guess, a little bit, so this goes out maybe to like here. and I need to make it go back a little further, so I'm going to go to face select and get this back face and just pull this back some until it basically goes front to back the whole way. And this is supposed to be angled similar to how this is angled, so we need to make this more of an angle. So go to edge select and select this edge, and you can press 3 for side view if you want, and then just try to match the angle. So this angle should be similar to this angle. That looks about correct. And I'm going to do select linked and just pull this over some, because this is supposed to overlap this piece a little bit, sort of like how I have it here. I think I'm going to pull this out a little more, something like that. And I deleted the back face, so we can delete the back face on this. We can go to face select, select this back face, press delete, choose faces. It's usually a good idea to delete the faces that are not facing the camera or anything like that. I know we didn't delete any of these, but that's fine. In this case, since it's actually a hole that's right here, it makes more sense to delete it so that it's actually a hole. And now we're going to do another inset, and we're going to hold control again to create this outer area as well. But first we need to make this a little bit longer in this direction, so I'm going to select this side face, and we're going to pull it over some. I actually want to just see how tall this is in comparison, because it looks like it might be a little bit taller than that. Yeah, so we can make this a little shorter by bringing this down, and you'll have to adjust your angle again because it's not going to be correct. But now we have this, so I think it should be a little longer than that still. And actually this whole thing probably needs to move more to the left, because in this there's a little space between this part and this part here, and ours really doesn't have that. Well, I guess it kind of does, but I'm going to move it a little over anyway. So I'm going to press A twice, or just press A until everything's selected, and you can move everything over slightly. Maybe a little more, so I can make this a little bigger. Something like that. And this actually has to be moved down some from the looks of it. This should be touching the bottom here. So I just use vertex snapping to snap it to the bottom. And now we're going to need another loop cut so that we can, well, first we want to make this inset, and then we're going to add a loop cut here so that we can isolate this area and create this hole. So we're going to select this face, press I. When you get the inset distance you want, hold control, bring it out a little. Something like that. And if you're not happy with how far out it is, you can change this from global to normal. And this will allow you to move it in the same direction that inset would allow you to move it in, just by moving it in the direction of the face normal instead of the global position or direction. So this would be the face normal direction. You can adjust the inset depth like that instead. So I just changed this back to global. And now we're going to need that loop cut. So I'm going to do Control R, add in a loop cut about here. We're going to go back to face select and get this face. And we're going to do an inset here. So we're going to press I to inset, something like that, and delete this face. So press delete, choose faces. Now we have our hole, but it's not rounded on the corners like we want it to be, so we're going to go to vertex select, alt right click on this, control shift and B. That will do a vertex bevel, and we're going to bevel it like that. And we basically want to bring this vertex in more, and then we can have that rounded shape, and the same on all these. So to do that, we're going to go to edge select, select this edge, go to tools, and subdivide, and just do that for all of these. Each one of these, just select them and subdivide. Now we have an extra vertex at each point, or in the center of each edge here. So in vertex select, we're going to join the very outermost point to the center point. So select this point, shift select this one, J to join. And what that's going to allow us to do is select this point, for example, press G twice. And now we can vertex slide straight towards the center of that edge. And we can get that curve that we want. But in order to make sure all the curves are uniform, what we're going to do is make sure that this center edge is highlighted in yellow. That will tell you that that's the edge it's sliding on. And you can see down in the bottom left, it has like the vertex slide amount, like just below where my cursor is now. So if we bring this down along the center line, you can see now this is basically where I want it, and the value is roughly 0.8. So if I just type in 0.8 on the number pad and then press enter, it will move 80% of the way, or at least I believe that's how it works. But it will move 0.8 distance, whatever units they use or whatever calculation they use. So you can select this one, press G twice, and with the center thing highlighted, the center edge highlighted in yellow, like this, you can type in 0.8 and press enter, and now you'll notice that we have the exact same result. So we don't have to guess. These will just automatically be the same curvature here. So we're just going to finish this off, G twice. Make sure the center thing's highlighted, press 0.8 and then enter. Now we have these extra vertices, so we're just going to select these, get all 4 of them, press delete and choose vertices. And now you can see we have this nice hole here. And what I did on this one is I actually gave it some depth and tried to make it a little more realistic like this. So to do that, we're just going to alt right click, alt and shift right click, and just continue holding alt, shift, and right clicking until you get the whole thing. Now we're going to press F to make a face, I to inset, do a really small inset, then E to extrude, right click to cancel, and with your thing set to global, we're going to bring this back on the Y axis, and then when you have the depth that you want, you can press delete and get rid of this face. Now we have some n-gons here, which were created when we did our vertex bevels. So to remove those, we're just going to select one vertex at a time and then shift select this vertex and press J. And then just continue doing that around the whole thing, so that we can get rid of those n-gons. So now we have something more like this. We're going to have to turn smooth shading on again in object mode. So now we have a bit more detail behind here. There's a bit more going on. It's not so simple like we had it. And I actually think I'm going to pull these in some more so that there's less of a gap here because it doesn't look the best. So I'm going to press A twice until all this stuff's selected and drag it in some, just so that when we look at the car, there's not really this gap that looks not so good right there. So I'm going to press A to deselect everything, and we're going to finish off the rest of the detail. There's this little triangle here, this triangle thing. It's actually like bolted down to this piece that's below it, but we don't really need to add in the bolts, I don't think. Just a little bit of detail, since this is a lower poly model, is going to be enough for us. So we're going to go to create, still with our cursor over here, and we're going to make a circle. We're going to change the vertices to 3. That'll give us a triangle. And press F to make a face. I'm going to press RX and then 90. We can see that the normals are messed up because it's dark on this side and it's light on this side. So we're going to press RZ 180. That'll flip it around. And what we want for a triangle is we want a 90-degree angle here at this corner. To make that happen, we're just going to select this vertex, drag it on the x-axis, and snap it to this bottom vertex. That will give us a perfect 90-degree angle. And then we just want to scale it down and position it. So we're going to do select linked, scale it down, bring it more into position. You can press G and then hold Control and snap it down here somewhere and scale it again. That looks to be about the same. This little triangle thing I think is a little bit above this other piece because the bolts would go through and it's not like tightly up against this thing, I don't think. So just keep it a little above that if you want. Then we're going to press E to extrude, right click to cancel, bring this back. Basically the same distance as we did for this other piece. It's not too important, the back of this is not going to be really visible. Then we're going to do select linked and Control N to recalculate the normals, or you can go to mesh, normals, recalculate outside. That'll do the same thing. And then do Control B and do a small bevel, and then we're going to select this face and delete it, and that should give us what we want. I do believe. So in order to kind of finish this off, we actually should just hide the rest of this to make it easier. So I'm going to do select linked, Shift H, and period to focus in on this. Get this vertex here, and this vertex on the bottom, and then press F to make a face. That should be good for that side, and do the same on this side. So we want this vertex here, this one here, and this one here. Not that one, this one. F to make a face. Now we want this edge, and this edge, and this top edge, and the bottom edge, I guess, or no, just press F to make a face, I think, and that should be fine. Just gonna take a look at that. Actually, we need to unhide everything, so I'm gonna do Alt H to unhide everything. That unhides the car as well, but we don't really want that, so we're going to select each of these individual pieces and then do select linked so that we get this whole piece that we were working on, all these pieces, and then do Shift H. Now we can get a better look at how it all looks together. Looks okay, I guess. And I think I want to pull this back more, this little triangle thing. So I'm going to do select linked, pull it back some, and actually maybe I'll just bring it down some. Just to try to give it a nicer look. Even though on this one it's kind of hovering above it. Then the last thing is to add in this little cylinder, because this part of the car just kind of connects with a cylinder type thing. I'm not really sure what it does, but there's like some cylinder thing there, which has a lot more detail than just this, but this is good enough for us. So what we want to do is actually in object mode create a cylinder, but since our cursor was in the wrong spot, we're going to just delete it and then do Shift S, cursor to center, and create a cylinder. Change the vertex count to 8, set the shading to smooth in object mode, then press tab RX90, and we're going to bring this back to the back of the car. And we want to delete this interior face, so select it, and actually we want to delete both of these faces. So select them both, delete faces, and then select the face, do select linked, and scale this down. Bring it up and into position. You can do Control 1 to go to back view, Z for wireframe, and move this more into position. Scale it down a little more, and bring it back so that it looks like it's connecting with this, even though it's not really connecting. I just want to look at how I kind of did this. Yeah, that's basically what I did. Then the only other thing, like for now, just possibly temporarily, we might change it later, but I just added in this plane to kind of block the view so you can't see behind all this stuff. So to add in that plane, we're going to select the car again, tab into edit mode, and Alt H, A to deselect, and we're going to have to reposition our cursor again. So left click on the back of the car, left click over here, create a plane, RX90, and RZ180 to get the normals facing the correct direction, bring them together, let go, then press S to scale, Controls and 1 to go to back view, Z for wireframe, and just kind of get this in position. Scale on the Z axis if you need it to be taller. So something like this. And we can also angle it so it's more, I don't think I did that though. Yeah, I didn't even really bother with that. So I just kind of put this over here and made it a little taller. Bring it back a little more maybe. Or actually, maybe not. I'll just leave it here. And then we can go back to object mode and select this cylinder. Tab into edit mode, vertex select, alt right click to get this back part, so we only have this back part. And you can bring it back so that it kind of intersects with that plane there, so good to go. So I'm going to select the car again in object mode. Now we can kind of take a look at this. So we have some more detail than we had. Of course, it's not, 100% realistic, but we're not going for that because it's a low poly car, and we still have a decent vertex count even though we added all these details. there are a few things we can do to make this look a little nicer down at the bottom. So I'm just going to press tab to go into edit mode, go to face select, and we're going to just try to select each of the pieces here again, then do select linked and shift H to hide everything else, so we have just this. The shading here is not the best, it's not the best on this piece either, and we can fix it down here as well. So we're gonna fix these issues here. And another thing is we're just gonna select this face, and well, maybe this face here, do shift D to duplicate, right click to cancel, S to scale it down, or S. Yeah, we're just gonna do S to scale it down a little, and then E to extrude, right click to cancel, and bring it in until it touches this other part there, because there is this little square piece that kind of connects into that, so that'll add in a little extra detail there. But we're gonna want to make sure we put smooth shading on, and that's not going to look the best now. So if we do select linked, C for circle select, middle mouse to deselect, so we get those two faces on the ends, and then delete them. So delete faces, then we want to get this whole thing again, so do select linked, and we're just going to do Control B, make a small bevel to kind of correct that shading that was giving us a problem, so now it looks nicer. We're going to make this look a little nicer, so we're going to do Control R, left click, right click, then we're going to do Alt S and just bring it out some until the shading improves. But you don't want to bring this out further than this other loop that's going around, so just be careful. And that should improve the shading. You can see it looks a lot nicer now. And another thing we can do to fix these is we're just going to Alt right click, Shift Alt right click, so we got those two outer edges. These inner ones are a little more difficult to get. Just Alt Shift right click, and you're going to have to do it for each one of these. Alt Shift and right click to get these. We don't want these bottom ones, so we're going to do C for circle select, middle mouse to deselect, and we're going to get rid of these two on the bottom, or these four on the bottom. I'm going to bevel this thing as well, so we're just going to hold shift and select these. Make sure you get all four edges. Then we're going to do Control B and add in a small bevel. You can hold shift to make smaller adjustments. And now we should see that this is all starting to look a little better, except this one still doesn't look the greatest. So what I'm going to do is Control Z, and we're going to do Control B again, and then this time we're going to mouse wheel up, and we'll get an extra see, now we have 3 edges instead of 2, so we usually have 2. When you mouse wheel up, you get this third one, and that usually makes things look nicer. If 2 isn't working, 3 usually looks a lot better, but for some reason it still doesn't look the best, to be honest. So I'm going to undo that and just stick with 2, because it doesn't really look any better with 3. So I think that's going to be good enough for that. And actually I think what'll help is if maybe if we delete this top face, and we could probably delete the back faces, and that may or may not help. I'm actually going to Control Z that just because, well, it may have helped a little at the top. You see when I deleted that, it changed the shading, but it's not helping as much as I want it to. So I think what we can do is we can just select these faces here, press I to inset, and do a small inset, and that hopefully, that just looks a little too flat, I think. So, well, I'll leave it up to you if you like that or not. I guess it does look a little better. So maybe that's all we had to do from the beginning, was just inset this face and this face, and you could skip the bevels. But I guess I'll leave that up to you. I may go back and change it and just see what it looks like with just the insets and not these bevels, so I can just do Control Z until I get back to the main thing. And since I haven't saved it yet, you could always go back and just start over if you don't want these bevels, if you can't do Control Z enough times to get rid of them. But I'm gonna try a few things on my own. You can do the same if you want, and then when you're happy with it, just make sure you go to File and Save.